Fix this, kid, and I'll give you 50 million. Terry Huffman's finger stabbed toward Karen Douglas like she was a stain on his marble floor. The girl went rigid, visitor badge trembling against her chest, while her mother Rose emptied wastebaskets around 200 silent executives. Huffman's mouth curved into something cruel. Maybe a child can solve what my engineers can't. Harsh laughter rolled through the Huffman Dynamics demonstration hall. Rose reached for Karen's arm, trying to pull her toward the exit. 3 million live stream viewers watched the Billionaire CEO humiliate a child for entertainment. Behind Huffman, massive LED screens blazed red with system failures. His billion-dollar AI controller had been crashing for 3 days straight. His team of specialists stood frozen, faces hollow with exhaustion. Karen stared at those screens with strange intensity. Her small hands opened and closed like she was tracing invisible connections. None of the adults noticed the recognition flickering in her dark eyes. They were about to learn the most expensive lesson of their careers. Hi there. Hit the like button and subscribe right now if you believe the smartest person in the room is often the one everyone underestimates. And don't forget to let me know in the comments below where you are watching from. The crisis had begun 72 hours earlier when Huffman's AI controller started destabilizing critical infrastructure systems. Traffic grids locked. Hospital logistics failed. Emergency services went dark. Lawsuits were mounting. Huffman's stock had hemorrhaged $4 billion in 3 days. Now, in this glass-walled headquarters overlooking the city, Huffman faced the wolves. Representatives from competing tech firms filled the front rows. Government regulators whispered urgently in the back. Industry journalists kept checking their devices, probably writing obituaries for Huffman Dynamics in real time. Ladies and gentlemen, Huffman's voice carried desperation he couldn't quite mask. We're experiencing temporary technical difficulties with our core systems. My team assures me we'll resolve this within. Your system nearly killed people in 3 cities yesterday, a regulator cut him off coldly. Huffman's jaw locked. Behind him, 50 engineers hunched over workstations, their faces glowing blue in the screen light. PhDs from top universities, specialists recruited from rival companies, the best minds money could buy, all failing spectacularly. Carl, his lead architect, approached with trembling urgency. Terry, we've tried everything. Complete diagnostic sweeps, manual overrides, system rollbacks, nothing works. The live stream counter showed 3.4 million viewers. Tech blogs were calling it the death of Huffman Dynamics. Social media exploded with predictions about which company would acquire the wreckage. Karen watched from the corner, invisible to everyone except her mother, who moved methodically through the chaos. The girl had been visiting these buildings since she could walk. While other children played, Karen studied abandoned monitors. She'd learned logic from salvaged programming manuals, taught herself systems thinking for machines people threw away. Her classroom was the server room. Her teachers were the humming machines no one else noticed. Huffman paced like something caged. This is why standards matter, he announced to no one in particular. Real engineering requires proper education, advanced degrees, years of structured training. His eyes swept the room with contempt. You can't just walk in and understand complex systems. Intelligence isn't accidental. It's cultivated through the right schools, the right breeding, the right credentials. Rose bent over another bin. 20 years of cleaning these towers, 20 years of watching brilliant people solve impossible problems while her daughter sat forgotten in corners. The irony would have been beautiful if it weren't so bitter. Huffman's phone buzzed relentlessly. Board members, shareholders, competitors circling for the kill. Every major tech company was preparing bids for Huffman's patents once the bankruptcy hit. "Sir," his assistant whispered with panic, "the regulators are threatening emergency seizure." Huffman straightened his tie, forcing authority he no longer possessed. This demonstration was supposed to prove Huffman Dynamics' dominance. Instead, it was becoming his public execution. The room's tension was suffocating. Billion-dollar contracts hung suspended. Thousands of jobs waited for the verdict. The future of critical infrastructure itself balanced on the edge of this single moment. Karen shifted in her plastic chair, her young mind processing patterns that escaped the adults around her. She'd been watching their screens for the past hour, watching them chase elaborate theories while missing something beautifully obvious. But she was just a kid. A cleaner's daughter. Someone to be ignored, dismissed, invisible. Huffman checked his watch. The presentation was supposed to run 2 hours. He'd already burned through 50 minutes of stammering excuses and technical delays. Perhaps, suggested a government official with surgical precision, we should consider emergency intervention. A company with more stable systems. The words landed like physical blows. Huffman's empire was collapsing in real time, broadcast to millions, witnessed by the industry's most powerful players. Rose finished with the last bin and moved toward Karen. Time to go, baby. Time to let the important people handle things. But Karen's eyes remained locked on those screens, her mind racing through connections that would change everything. What happens when the one person with the answer is the one nobody thinks to ask? Karen stood as her mother reached for her hand. Mama, wait. Rose looked embarrassed. Karen, no. These people are busy. But Karen's eyes stayed fixed on the main display. Numbers and alerts cascaded everywhere. While the engineers frantically recalibrated, Karen saw something they'd completely missed. Huffman was explaining to the regulators why they needed more time when Karen's small voice cut through the tension. Excuse me. The room went silent. 200 heads turned toward a child who had no business speaking in this billion-dollar collapse. Huffman's face darkened. Not now, sweetheart. The adults are working. Karen took 3 steps forward, backpack bouncing against her shoulders. I think I see what's wrong. Uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the crowd of investors. One regulator raised an eyebrow. A competitor executive smirked. That's sweet, Huffman's voice dripped condescension. But this is advanced systems architecture, honey. Maybe stick to your schoolwork. Carl started to intervene, but Karen pressed forward with startling certainty. The computer is confused. Huffman gestured at the wall of flashing alerts. Yes, obviously it's malfunctioning. That's why we have 50 experts trying to. No. Karen interrupted with unusual confidence. It's not broken. It just doesn't understand what you're asking it. The room fell completely silent. Every engineer stopped typing. Karen pointed at the main screen. Right there. You're telling the computer to change something, but you need to ask it to check something first. Carl squinted at the display, following Karen's finger to a specific line buried among thousands. It's like. Karen explained simply, when you tell someone your name is Sarah instead of asking if their name is Sarah. The computer gets mixed up. Huffman's confidence fractured slightly. That's not how systems work. Can I show you? Karen asked with fearless childhood curiosity. The live stream viewer count hit 4 million. Comments flooded faster than moderators could process. Hashtag #CEOCHILD began trending worldwide. One regulator leaned forward with interest. I'd like to see what the child suggests. Huffman felt trapped. Refusing would look petty. Agreeing would legitimize a child's opinion over his team's expertise. Fine, he said through clenched teeth. Carl, let her point out whatever she thinks she sees. When nothing happens, perhaps we can return to actual engineering. Karen walked to Carl's workstation, completely unintimidated by the room full of powerful adults watching her every move. Here, she pointed at the screen. The computer thinks you're changing the state instead of checking the state. You need to ask the question differently. Carl stared at the line Karen indicated. Such a tiny detail buried in millions of calculations. His fingers trembled as he made the smallest possible adjustment. One keystroke. One symbol. He pressed enter. The room held its breath. Error messages continued cascading for a heartbeat. Then, one by one, they began disappearing. System status indicators shifted from angry red to cautious yellow to steady green. Within 60 seconds, every screen showed perfect stability. The benchmark visit was supposed to be inspiring. No one expected it to become the day a billionaire learned humility from the child he tried to humiliate. The silence lasted exactly 4 seconds. Then chaos erupted. Engineers shouted over each other, rushing toward Carl's workstation. Executives leaned forward in their seats, craning to see the stabilized screens. Journalists' fingers flew across keyboards. Someone's phone clattered to the floor, forgotten. Karen stepped back from the workstation, hands folded in front of her, while grown men and women crowded around the machine she just fixed with a single keystroke. "Run full diagnostics," Carl barked, his voice shaking. "I need confirmation on all subsystems." "Traffic grid simulation, stable," someone called out. "Hospital logistics, optimal performance. Energy distribution, no errors detected. All systems showing green across the board." Terry Huffman stood frozen, his expression caught between relief and something that looked almost like anger. Around him, executives from rival companies whispered urgently. The government regulators exchanged meaningful glances. Rose moved quickly to Karen's side, wrapping a protective arm around her daughter's shoulders. "We should go, baby. You did what they asked." But Karen's eyes hadn't left the screens. "Beginner's luck," Terry announced suddenly, his voice cutting through the commotion. He forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sometimes fresh eyes spot things simply because they don't know what they're looking for. Random chance. Nothing more. Alan, one of the younger engineers, stopped typing. "Terry, that wasn't random. She identified a conditional logic error that we've been." "A coincidence," Terry interrupted smoothly, already reconstructing his authority. "The system was likely resolving itself naturally. The timing just happened to align with." He gestured vaguely at Karen, the child's participation. Karen's classmate Jason leaned over to another student. "That's not what happened. Did you see the screens? The second she fixed it." "Children," their teacher Linda said quickly, sensing dangerous territory. "Let's let the professionals discuss their work." But Jesse, a junior engineer who'd been watching the whole exchange, couldn't stay quiet. "With respect, Terry, that change Karen made was surgical. She isolated a state-checking error that was propagating across multiple modules. That's not luck. That's pattern recognition." Terry's smile tightened. "I'm sure it seemed that way." Karen had been quiet this whole time, still watching the screens even as the adults debated around her. She tilted her head slightly, studying the data streams flowing across multiple displays. "Mr. Huffman," she said softly. The room didn't quiet immediately. Terry pretended not to hear her, turning to address the regulators instead. "As you can see, the situation is resolving. We'll prepare a full report on the temporary disruption and—" "Mr. Huffman," Karen repeated, louder this time. Terry stopped mid-sentence. 200 pairs of eyes turned to the small girl standing beside her mother. "Yes." Terry's tone was patient in a way that suggested his patience was running thin. Karen pointed at a secondary display screen. "Can I ask the computer something?" The question confused the room into silence. "Ask it," Carl echoed. "What do you mean?" Karen walked closer to the screens, Rose's hand slipping from her shoulder as the girl moved with quiet purpose. "You're telling it what to do," she explained, her finger tracing invisible connections between data points. "But you never asked it what it already knows." Jason, her classmate, whispered loudly, "What does that mean?" Karen glanced back at him, then at the room full of adults watching her like she was speaking another language. "It's like—" She paused, searching for words they'd understand. "It's like when my teacher asks if we finished our homework, but she already marked it. The computer is trying to show you something it already calculated, but you keep interrupting with new instructions. That's adorable, Terry said with strained amusement. But systems don't work through conversation, sweetheart. They execute commands based on. Can I show you? Karen asked, not argumentative, just genuinely curious if she could demonstrate what she was seeing. Carl looked at Terry. Terry looked at the regulators. The regulators looked interested. This is highly irregular, Terry said. So is a complete system failure during a demonstration, one regulator replied evenly. Let's see what she's observing. Terry's jaw clenched, but he nodded once. Karen approached Carl's workstation again. This time, her classmates crowded closer, trying to see. Linda made a half-hearted attempt to hold them back, then gave up. Here, Karen pointed at lines of code scrolling past. This part keeps asking if something changed. But it changed 3 steps ago. So it keeps checking something that already happened instead of moving forward. Carl squinted at the screen. The validation loop in the state manager. It's confused, Karen said simply. Not broken. Just confused about what already finished and what's still waiting. Alan moved beside Carl, both engineers staring at what Karen had identified. She's right, Alan breathed. We've been treating this as a calculation error, but it's a sequence assumption error. The system is validating state changes that already completed. Basic logic, Carl murmured, almost to himself. We were looking for complex failures and missing fundamental sequencing. Terry crossed his arms. If it's so basic, why did no one catch it? Jesse spoke up quietly. Because we were trained to solve complex problems. Sometimes training becomes a filter. We see what we expect to see. Karen made a small adjustment to the code. Changed one operator. Shifted one conditional statement. Wait, Carl started, but Karen had already pressed enter. Another module stabilized. Performance metrics jumped. Processing speed increased by 30%. The room went completely quiet. Karen's classmate Jessie, the red-headed girl from the image, pressed forward, eyes wide. How did you know that would work? Karen shrugged. The computer wasn't doing anything wrong. It was just waiting for permission to stop checking. This doesn't make sense, one of the MIT-educated engineers said, shaking his head. A child can't just. Can't what? Jessie from Karen's class challenged, her young voice sharp. See what you missed. Terry stepped forward, sensing control slipping further from his grasp. All right, I'll admit, that was impressive. 2 lucky guesses. But our systems are extraordinarily complex, with dozens of interdependent. There are others, Karen said quietly. The words dropped like stones into water. Terry stopped talking. What did you say? Carl asked. Karen's eyes moved across the displays, seeing patterns invisible to everyone else in the room. The same confusion. In other parts. The computer keeps asking questions about things it already knows. Alan pulled up additional system modules. Where? Karen pointed. Then pointed again. And again. Each time, engineers verified. Each time, they found the exact same pattern. State-checking errors. Validation loops running on completed processes. Simple sequencing confusion repeated across dozens of modules. This isn't isolated, Carl said slowly, horror dawning in his voice. This is systemic. How is that possible? Someone asked. These modules were built by different teams over different years. Jesse, the junior engineer, understood first. They were all trained the same way. Same methodologies. Same assumptions about error checking. Same institutional knowledge passed down through teams. Karen nodded. Everyone learned to solve the same way. So everyone made the same kind of confusion. Terry's face had gone pale. You're telling me a structural flaw exists across our entire architecture? Not a flaw, Karen corrected gently. A habit. A way of thinking that works most of the time but confuses computers when things get complicated. Alan was typing rapidly, pulling up system after system. She's right. I'm seeing the pattern everywhere. We've been building inefficiency into our systems for years and compensating with more processing power instead of fixing the underlying logic. One of the executives stood up. How much performance are we losing? Conservatively. Carl calculated quickly. 30 to 40% across all systems. The number hung in the air like an accusation. Terry turned to Karen, and for the first time, she saw something other than condescension in his eyes. She saw fear. How many more can you find? He asked quietly. Karen looked at the screens, at the patterns only she seemed to see, at the confusion built into systems everyone else had learned to accept as normal. All of them, she said. All of them. The words echoed through the demonstration hall like a challenge nobody knew how to answer. Terry's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Carl, who was already pulling up system architecture maps across multiple screens. Color-coded modules spread out like a vast city grid, each one representing years of development, millions of dollars in investment, thousands of hours of expert work. Start with the traffic management system, Carl said, his voice steady but his hands shaking slightly as he typed. If the pattern exists there. Third module down, Karen pointed without hesitation. Same problem. Different numbers, same confusion. Alan navigated to the code. Scanned it. His face went slack. She's right. State validation running on completed transitions. Jesus, we certified this for deployment 3 months ago. Hospital logistics, Karen continued, moving to another display. That one too. And the energy grid controller. Check the synchronization protocols. Engineers scattered to different workstations, pulling up systems. Karen moved between them like she was reading a language everyone else had forgotten, pointing out the same elegant mistake hidden in different forms across every major system Huffman Dynamics had built. Transportation hub coordination. Yes, confirmed, someone called out. Emergency response routing. Same pattern, another voice added. Manufacturing automation. It's here too. Jesse, the junior engineer who defended Karen earlier, stood beside her now, watching with something like awe. How are you seeing this so fast? Karen glanced at her. Because they all talk the same way. Once you hear the confusion in one, you recognize it everywhere. But we have different teams, Jesse said. Different departments. Different project leads. Same training, Karen replied simply. Everyone learned the same rules. So everyone made the same kind of mistake. It's not a mistake, Terry interjected sharply, his voice carrying across the room. It's a methodology. Industry-standard error-checking protocols that have been refined over decades. That confused computers, Karen finished quietly. The live stream viewer count had climbed to 5.2 million. The chat was moving so fast it was unreadable. Tech journalists were already publishing real-time updates. Hashtag Huffman Dynamics was trending worldwide, but not for the reasons Terry had planned. Linda, the teacher, pulled Rose aside near the back of the room. Rose, I think we should go. This is becoming complicated. There could be legal implications. If Karen says something that damages the company, if they claim she had access to proprietary. She's just telling them what she sees, Rose said, her voice tight with a fear she was trying to hide. That's what worries me, Linda whispered urgently. A child shouldn't be able to see this. They might think she had help. Or access. Or maybe she's just smarter than they are, Rose said, louder than she meant to. Several executives turned to look. Karen's classmates had moved closer to the workstations, forming a small protective circle around her. Jason stood with his arms crossed, glaring at any adult who looked skeptical. The red-haired girl Jessie had her phone out, recording everything. Alan, the youngest boy, was taking notes in a spiral notebook like this was the most important field trip of his life. Karen found another one, Jason announced proudly to no one in particular. Terry watched this shift happening in real time. The narrative slipping away from him. A billion-dollar company being debugged by a child while millions watched. His engineers verifying her observations instead of defending their work. His authority evaporating with each confirmation. "How many total?" he asked Carl, his voice controlled but cold. Carl didn't look up from his screen. Preliminary scan shows the pattern in 47 major systems. Maybe more in subsystems we haven't checked. 47, Terry repeated. And she can identify them all? So far, she's been accurate every single time, Alan said. Terry's jaw worked silently. He looked at the screens, at Karen, at the cameras capturing everything, at the executives from competing companies who were now taking very detailed notes. This is fascinating, Karen was explaining to Jesse the engineer, completely unaware of the tension building around her. Because you're not asking the computer, did this finish? You're telling it, this finished, and then checking if it finished. So it gets stuck checking something it already knows. Why didn't we see this? Jesse asked, not defensively, but genuinely curious. Because it works most of the time, Karen said. The computer is fast enough to check even when it doesn't need to. But when lots of things happen at once, all that unnecessary checking makes it slow. And when it gets too slow, it looks broken. But it's not broken, Jessie said, understanding blooming across her face. It's just doing exactly what you told it to do, Karen agreed. The instructions are wrong, not the computer. One of the senior engineers, a man with gray hair and a Stanford insignia on his laptop, spoke up. With all due respect, this is an 8-year-old child. The probability that she's correctly identified systematic architectural flaws that trained engineers missed is 100% so far, Alan interrupted. Sir, we verified every single observation she's made. Then maybe we should ask ourselves why, the Stanford engineer said sharply. Why can a child with no formal training see patterns that we can't? The question hung in the air like an accusation. Because you were taught not to look for them, Karen said softly. Every head turned toward her. You learned that this way of checking is correct, she continued, her voice still gentle, still just a child trying to explain something obvious. So when things go wrong, you look for complicated reasons. You think something new broke. But sometimes nothing new broke. Sometimes the old way was never quite right, and you just got used to it. The silence that followed was different from before. Heavier. More uncomfortable. Rose saw it first, the shift in Terry's expression from fear to something harder. Something defensive. Mommy, Karen's classmate whispered, tugging on Linda's sleeve. Why do they look angry? Because intelligence from unexpected places doesn't feel like a gift, Linda thought. It feels like a threat. Terry straightened his tie, cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice carried the full weight of his authority, his credentials, his empire. All right, he announced. I think we've indulged this experiment long enough. The room went still. This was meant to be an educational visit, not a diagnostic session conducted by someone with no training, no credentials, and no understanding of the broader implications of what she's claiming to see. Terry, Carl started. We'll have our engineers conduct a thorough review, Terry continued, speaking over him. A proper, methodical analysis by qualified professionals. In the meantime, I think it's time we concluded this demonstration. He turned to Linda. Ms. Rodriguez, perhaps you should collect your students. This has gone far beyond the scope of a school visit. Karen looked at Terry, then at her mother, then at the screen still showing all the patterns she'd found. But I can help fix. Thank you for your input, Terry said with finality. But I think the adults can take it from here. But I think the adults can take it from here. Terry's dismissal landed like a door slamming shut. Linda immediately began herding students toward the exit. Come on, children. Back to the bus. We've taken up enough of these people's time. Karen didn't move. She stood staring at the screens, at all the patterns still glowing there, waiting to be understood, waiting to be fixed. Karen, Rose said gently, reaching for her daughter's hand. Let's go, baby. Wait. The voice came from the back of the room. One of the executives from a rival company, a woman with sharp eyes and an expensive suit, stood up. Mr. Huffman, if I may? Terry's smile was tight. Of course, Ms. Chen. You made an offer at the beginning of this demonstration. Ms. Chen gestured toward Karen. $50 million to fix the computer. That offer still stand. The room went deadly quiet. Terry's face barely moved, but something flickered behind his eyes. He'd forgotten. In his rush to regain control, he'd completely forgotten his own public challenge. That was a joke, Terry said, forcing a laugh. Obviously. A rhetorical. 5.2 million people heard you make that offer, Ms. Chen interrupted, glancing at the live stream count. It's already been clipped and shared across every social media platform. I've seen it 4 times in the last 10 minutes. Another executive chimed in. My team is already fielding questions from journalists asking if Huffman Dynamics will honor the commitment. Terry's jaw clenched. She fixed one module. With assistance. The full system architecture comprises hundreds of interconnected. 47, Carl said quietly. She identified problems in 47 major systems. All verified. Identified, Terry emphasized. Not fixed. Pointing out potential issues is not the same as resolving them. The actual repair work requires. Let her try, Jesse the junior engineer said suddenly. Every head turned. Jessie straightened under the attention, her voice gaining strength. If she can do what she claims, if she can actually fix these patterns across all systems, that's worth knowing. And if she can't. She paused. Then you're proven right, and everyone sees that professional engineering requires professional expertise. Terry saw the trap immediately. Agree, and he legitimized a child's challenge to his authority. Refuse, and he looked afraid. Ms. Chen smiled slightly. Sounds like a win-win to me, Mr. Huffman. Either your systems get fixed, or you get to teach a valuable lesson about why credentials matter. In front of 5 million witnesses. And the 50 million, someone called out. Terry's hands flexed at his sides. The live stream counter now read 5.7 million. Comments were exploding. His board members were calling. His competitors were watching with undisguised interest. He did the calculation quickly. The child would fail. She had to. Identifying patterns was one thing. Actually, restructuring complex systems was entirely different. She'd get overwhelmed, make mistakes, prove she was out of her depth. And he'd be vindicated in front of the world. Fine, Terry said, his voice carrying across the silent room. Let's turn this into a proper lesson. Rose grabbed Karen's arm. No, absolutely not. Karen, we're leaving right now. 24 hours. Terry announced, speaking over her. You have 1 full day to fix the entire system architecture. Every core module. Every identified issue. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That's impossible, Carl breathed. Our team couldn't do that in 24 hours. Then I guess we'll find out what a child can accomplish, Terry said with false generosity. He turned to Karen, his smile sharp. If you succeed, if you actually manage to resolve every systemic issue you've identified, I'll wire $50 million to a trust in your name. The room erupted. Terry, this is insane, Alan protested. This is exploitation, Linda said, her teacher's instincts overriding her usual deference. She's 8 years old. You can't put this kind of pressure on a child. No one's forcing her, Terry said smoothly. It's entirely her choice. He looked at Karen with challenge in his eyes. What do you say? Want to prove you're as smart as you think you are? Rose stepped between them, her voice shaking with anger and fear. You're using my daughter as some kind of publicity stunt. She's a child, not your redemption story. Mama! Rose turned. Karen was looking up at her with those calm, clear eyes. I want to help, Karen said simply. Baby, you don't understand what he's asking. 24 hours. That's. I know what it means, Karen said. And I think I can do it. You think. Rose's voice broke. He's setting you up to fail in front of millions of people. When you can't do it, everyone will remember you as the little girl who thought she was smarter than she was. Karen considered this. What if I can do it? Rose had no answer. Karen's classmates had crowded close, their faces a mixture of fear and excitement. Jason grabbed Karen's sleeve. This is like a movie. Are you really gonna try? $50 million, Alan whispered, awed. Karen, that's more money than most people see in their entire lives. It's not about the money, Jesse the engineer said, watching Karen carefully. It's about what happens if she succeeds. It changes everything. Terry checked his watch with theatrical precision. Clock starts now. 24 hours. My engineers will provide you with access to all systems. You'll work from a supervised workstation with full monitoring. He paused. And when you fail, you'll understand why real engineering requires years of training. And if she succeeds? Carl asked quietly. Terry's smile didn't waver. She won't. The engineers exchanged glances. Some looked uncomfortable. A child subjected to this kind of pressure felt wrong. Others looked curious, almost hungry to see what would happen. Carl approached Rose. Mrs. Douglas, I'll personally oversee this. I'll make sure she has breaks, food, rest. If at any point it becomes too much. This shouldn't be happening at all, Rose said, but her protest sounded hollow even to her own ears. The decision had already been made. The world was watching. The countdown had begun. Karen walked to the main workstation. It dwarfed her, the desk too high, the chair too large, the screens towering above her small frame. An engineer quickly grabbed a box for her to sit on. As she settled in, her classmates pressed close. Linda had given up trying to leave. You can do this, Jason said fiercely. Show them, the red-haired Jessie added. Alan just squeezed her shoulder. Rose stood behind her daughter, hands on Karen's shoulders, fear and pride warring on her face. Terry gestured to one of his assistants. Make it official. Full documentation. Timestamps. Third-party verification. He looked directly at the nearest camera. Let the record show that Karen Douglas has accepted the challenge. 24 hours to fix Huffman Dynamics' entire system architecture. The assistant's fingers flew across a tablet. Official start time, 2:47 p.m. On every screen in the building, a countdown clock appeared. 23 hours 59 minutes and 58 seconds. 23 hours 59 minutes and 57 seconds. 23 hours 59 minutes and 56 seconds. Karen's fingers touched the keyboard. Around her, engineers held their breath. Behind her, her mother prayed. Above her, screens full of broken patterns waited. The clock ticked, and Karen began to type. 23 hours 47 minutes and 22 seconds. Karen didn't start fixing anything. For the first 12 minutes, she just looked. Engineers shifted uncomfortably. Terry paced near the windows, checking his phone, glancing at Karen every few seconds. The live stream chat was moving too fast to read, thousands of comments per second, everyone waiting for something dramatic to happen. But Karen just sat there, scrolling slowly through system architectures, her eyes moving across screens like she was reading a story only she could understand. Is she doing anything? One executive whispered. Carl watched from beside her workstation. She's mapping, he said quietly. Mapping what? The relationships. She's not looking at individual problems. She's looking at how they connect. 23 hours, 34 minutes and 17 seconds. Karen opened a blank document. Started typing. Not code, just words. Lists. What are you writing? Jesse the engineer asked, leaning closer. Groups, Karen said without looking away from her work. Systems that talk to each other the same way. She created categories with simple names: checkers, waiters, repeaters, guessers. Alan, the senior engineer, read over her shoulder. She's organizing them by behavioral pattern, not by function. What's the difference? Someone asked. Huge difference, Alan breathed. We organize by what they do: traffic, medical, energy. She's organizing by how they think. Karen dragged system names into groups. Traffic management went into checkers. Hospital logistics went into waiters. Manufacturing automation split between repeaters and guessers. Why does that matter? Terry asked, trying to sound dismissive but unable to hide his curiosity. Because, Karen said, still focused on her screen, if they think the same way, they're confused the same way. So I can fix them the same way. 23 hours, 11 minutes and 3 seconds. This is inefficient, Terry said, louder now. You're wasting time categorizing when you should be fixing. The clock is running. Karen didn't respond. Just kept sorting. Rose touched Terry's arm. Let her work. She's a child playing with organizational charts, Terry snapped. This is exactly why expertise matters. A trained engineer would have started fixing things individually, Carl interrupted. Which is what we've been doing for 3 days. It didn't work. Terry's jaw tightened, but he fell silent. 22 hours, 48 minutes and 35 seconds. Karen finished her grouping. 17 system families. Each one containing multiple systems that talked the same way. Okay, she said softly. Starting with checkers. She pulled up the first system in that group. Traffic management. Found the state validation error she'd identified before. Fixed it with 3 precise changes. Then she opened the second system. Made the exact same 3 changes. Third system. Same changes. Fourth. Fifth. Sixth. Her fingers moved steadily, not fast, not frantic, just methodical. Each fix took less than 2 minutes. Each one followed the same pattern. She's not debugging each system individually, Jesse the engineer whispered, amazed. She's applying the same solution to the same type of thinking. It's like... Alan searched for words, like she found the typo in the instruction manual instead of fixing every instance where someone followed the wrong instructions. 22 hours, 19 minutes and 47 seconds. The first cluster completed. All 7 checker systems fixed. Performance metrics appeared on monitoring screens. Processing speed, plus 34%. Error rates, minus 89%. Resource efficiency, plus 41%. The engineers stared at the numbers in stunned silence. That's... Carl couldn't finish the sentence. Impossible, Terry said flatly. Run the diagnostics again. Those numbers are wrong. They ran them again. The numbers got better. Oh my God, someone whispered. Karen moved to the next group. Waiters. 10 systems that hesitated, checking for confirmations that had already arrived. Same process. Identify the pattern. Apply the fix. Move to the next. Her classmates had fallen asleep in chairs nearby, curled up under borrowed jackets. Linda sat with them, watching Karen work with something like wonder. 21 hours, 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Terry tried a different approach. Leaned against the desk beside Karen's workstation. You know, even if you fix all the technical issues, there's still liability concerns. Regulatory approval. Safety certifications. These things take months of review by. Mr. Huffman, Rose said quietly but firmly. Stop. Terry looked at her, surprised. She's working, Rose continued. Either let her work, or end this charade. But stop trying to convince her she's failing while she's succeeding. Terry opened his mouth, closed it, walked away. 19 hours, 43 minutes and 8 seconds. Karen completed the third cluster. Then the fourth. The monitoring screens showed system after system stabilizing, optimizing, performing better than they ever had. Journalists in the room were typing frantically. The live stream had peaked at 8.2 million viewers. Tech blogs were publishing real-time updates with headlines like Child Prodigy Debugging Billion-Dollar Systems and Huffman Dynamics Crisis Solved by 8-Year-Old. But Karen seemed unaware of all of it. She'd entered a state of deep focus, her young face serious, her movements economical. She'd stopped explaining what she was doing. Just worked. 17 hours, 55 minutes and 31 seconds. Rose brought her water. A sandwich. Karen ate without stopping, eyes never leaving the screens. Baby, you should rest. Almost done with this group, Karen murmured. 16 hours, 22 minutes and 17 seconds. Fifth cluster. Sixth. Seventh. Engineers had stopped questioning. Some were taking notes, trying to understand her methodology. Others just watched in silence. Carl pulled up aggregate performance metrics. Across all fixed systems, they were seeing improvements that shouldn't have been possible. Years of accumulated inefficiency being stripped away in hours. She's not just fixing bugs, he said to Alan. She's making our systems better than they were when they worked correctly. 14 hours, 8 minutes and 52 seconds. Karen finished the ninth cluster. Stretched her arms. Rolled her shoulders. Rose massaged her daughter's neck gently. How many more? Rose asked. 8 families left, Karen said. Then I need to check the connections between them. She pulled up the 10th cluster. Started the same methodical process. And then stopped. Her hands froze above the keyboard. Karen! Rose's voice carried alarm. Karen leaned closer to the screen, her eyes narrowing. She scrolled through code quickly, then slower, then back again. What is it? Carl asked, immediately alert. Karen didn't answer. She opened another system. Then another. Her expression changed from focused to confused to something else. Something worried. This isn't confusion, she said quietly. What? Karen looked up at Carl, then at the room full of engineers, then at Terry standing near the windows. This system isn't confused, she repeated, her voice small but certain. Someone made it this way on purpose. The room went absolutely silent. 13 hours, 54 minutes and 7 seconds. The clock kept ticking, but suddenly, nobody was watching it anymore. 13 hours, 54 minutes and 7 seconds. Someone made it this way on purpose. Carl was at Karen's side in 3 strides. Show me. Karen pointed at the screen, her finger tracing data pathways that branched in unusual directions. All the other confused systems were asking the wrong questions. But this one. She paused, searching for words. This one is asking the right questions and then hiding the answers. Hiding them where? Alan asked, crowding in beside Carl. Karen navigated deeper into the system architecture. Here. And here. Every time the system checks something important, it also sends a copy somewhere else. But it doesn't tell anyone it's doing that. Terry approached, his voice sharp. That's absurd. Our systems have multiple redundancy protocols and backup. Not backups, Karen interrupted, still focused on the screen. Copies that go outside. The word hung in the air like a live wire. Outside the system? Carl's voice had gone very quiet. Karen nodded. All the confusion everyone's been fixing? It makes the computer work so hard that nobody notices these little copies leaving. Jessie, the engineer, pulled up security logs on another terminal. Started scanning. Her face went pale. Oh no. Oh no no no. What? Terry demanded. Data exfiltration, Jessie whispered. Small packets. Consistent intervals. Hidden in normal traffic patterns. Her hands shook as she typed. How long has this been running? Alan checked timestamps. Based on these logs? At least 8 months. The room erupted into chaos. Engineers rushed to their workstations. Executives pulled out phones. Someone knocked over a coffee cup, ignored the spreading puddle. That's impossible, Terry said, but his voice lacked conviction. We have security audits, penetration testing, third-party verification. That all look for complicated attacks, Karen said. She sounded tired now, and young. This isn't complicated. It's just hiding. Carl was pulling up system after system, each one revealing the same pattern. Small data streams, carefully concealed, flowing steadily outward. She's right. The inefficiency we thought was accidental was providing cover. More processing load, more network traffic, more noise to hide the signal. What data is being copied? Ms. Chen, the rival executive, asked with laser focus. Alan went quiet, reading. Everything. System specifications. Performance metrics. Client information. Infrastructure vulnerabilities. He looked up. Someone has been stealing our entire operational blueprint. Terry's face had gone from pale to gray. Shut it down. All of it. Right now. Wait, Karen said urgently. If you shut it down, whoever's taking the copies will know you found them. She's right, Jessie said. We need to trace the destination first. Find out where it's going and who's receiving it. Terry's phone started buzzing insistently. He glanced at it. Board chair. They're watching the live stream. He looked sick. This is being broadcast. Everyone just heard. Turn off the stream, someone suggested. Too late, Carl said grimly. It's already recorded. Already shared. Trying to hide it now just makes us look guilty of a cover-up. Rose moved closer to Karen, her protective instincts screaming. Linda, the teacher, stood abruptly. I need to call the school. And probably a lawyer. If Karen discovered this, if there's any suggestion she's somehow involved. She's 8 years old, Rose said fiercely. I know that, Linda said, her voice shaking. But we need to protect her. Document that she was just identifying patterns, not accessing protected data, not. I wasn't stealing, Karen said, her voice small. Nobody thinks you were, baby, Rose assured her, shooting a hard look at Linda. But the damage was spreading through the room like cracks in ice. Engineers were exchanging worried glances. Executives were whispering urgently. The live stream chat had exploded. Millions of viewers watching a corporate espionage scandal unfold in real time. Mr. Huffman, one of the government regulators, spoke up. I need to notify federal cybersecurity authorities immediately. If foreign actors have had access to critical infrastructure systems. We don't know that it's foreign, Terry said desperately. It could be corporate espionage. A disgruntled employee. Some kind of. Look at the routing patterns, Jessie said, still typing. The data's being bounced through multiple international proxies. Professional-grade obfuscation. This isn't amateur hour. Karen had gone very quiet, staring at the screens with an expression that made Rose's heart hurt. This wasn't supposed to happen. Her daughter was supposed to fix computers, maybe earn money they desperately needed, prove that she was smart. Not uncover crimes. Not become a witness to something dangerous. Can you trace it? Carl asked Jesse. Find the final destination? I can try, but whoever set this up knew what they were doing. It's going to take time to. Every screen in the building flashed red simultaneously. A klaxon alarm split the air, loud and insistent. Security breach detected. Unauthorized access attempt. Lockdown protocol initiated. People screamed. Chairs scraped. Someone's phone clattered to the floor. Karen's eyes went wide. They know we found it. The building's external doors slammed shut with heavy mechanical thuds. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in harsh white. On every screen, the same message pulsed. System lockdown in effect. All personnel remain in current location. Security en route. Terry stood frozen, his empire collapsing around him in real time, broadcast to 8 million viewers. 13 hours, 41 minutes, and 33 seconds. The countdown clock kept ticking, but suddenly the $50 million seemed very far away. And the real danger had just announced its presence. 13 hours, 41 minutes, and 33 seconds. The alarm screamed for 15 seconds before someone killed them. The silence that followed was somehow worse. Terry's head of security burst through the sealed conference room door, tablet in hand, face grim. We've detected active intrusion attempts on multiple access points. Someone's trying to get in remotely, using credentials that shouldn't exist. Because they've been watching our systems for 8 months, Carl said, his voice hollow. They know everything. Can you stop them? Terry demanded. We've activated all countermeasures, but the security chief glanced at the live stream setup, at the millions still watching, and lowered his voice. Sir, we need to take this offline. Immediately. Terry looked at the cameras, at the viewer count, at his company's secrets spilling out in real time. For a moment, he seemed to be calculating something. Then his jaw set. No, he said. Sir, if we go dark now, it looks like a cover-up. The damage is already done. Everyone already knows. Terry's voice gained strength, the CEO reasserting himself. What we need is damage control, corporate messaging, legal strategy. He turned to Karen, and his expression had shifted entirely. No more condescension. No more fake generosity. Just cold assessment. You need to stop, he said flatly. Karen looked up from the screen where she'd been tracing data pathways. But I can still fix. You can't fix this. Terry cut her off. This is beyond technical repair. This is a legal nightmare. A regulatory catastrophe. Every system you touch becomes evidence. Every discovery you make increases our liability. He's right, one of the executives said. If this goes to court, if there are lawsuits, if the government investigates, we need to secure the chain of custody. Document everything. We can't have a child with no clearance, no authorization, accessing. She found it, Rose said, her voice sharp. She's the only reason you even know you've been robbed. And we're grateful, Terry said with practiced smoothness. But continuing is reckless. We have procedures, protocols, trained professionals who specialize in. In what? Alan interrupted. Missing this for 8 months? Terry's eyes went hard. Watch your tone. No, he's right, Jesse said, standing beside Alan. Our procedures failed. Our protocols failed. Everything we were trained to trust failed. The only person who saw clearly was a child, Terry finished. An 8-year-old with no credentials, no security clearance, and no legal standing. Which means every discovery she's made could be challenged in court. Inadmissible. Fruit of the poisonous tree. Linda spoke up, her teacher's concern bleeding into fear. He has a point, Rose. If Karen's methods are deemed improper, If they argue she shouldn't have had access, everything she found could be thrown out. They could claim she compromised the investigation. Rose's hand tightened on Karen's shoulder. So what are you saying? She should stop. Let them keep stealing. I'm saying, Terry enunciated carefully, that we need to hand this to proper authorities. Federal investigators. Cybersecurity specialists. People with the legal authority to. How long will that take? Karen asked quietly. Terry looked annoyed at the interruption. What? The investigators, Karen said. How long before they understand the systems well enough to stop it? That's not your concern. Days. Karen pressed. Weeks. Probably weeks, Carl admitted. Maybe months to fully understand the architecture and trace all the compromise points. Karen pointed at the screens. Whoever's taking the data knows we found them. They're trying to get in right now. What if they're not trying to steal more? What if they're trying to break things before you can stop them? The room went very still. That's speculation, Terry said, but his voice wavered. Is it? Karen looked around at the adults. If you spent 8 months stealing someone's secrets and they suddenly found out, would you just stop? Or would you try to hurt them first? She's right, the security chief said grimly. Scorched earth protocol. If they can't have the data advantage, they burn everything on their way out. It's standard hostile actor behavior. Then shut down everything, an executive suggested. Kill all external connections. Total isolation. Those systems control critical infrastructure, Allen said. Traffic management. Hospital networks. Emergency services. We shut down, people could die. The weight of that settled over the room like ash. Terry ran a hand through his hair, his polished exterior cracking. Then what do you suggest? Let a child continue poking around in systems she barely understands, hoping she doesn't make things catastrophically worse. Karen flinched. Rose saw it, the first time her daughter had looked unsure. Maybe he's right, Karen whispered. Maybe I don't understand enough. Maybe I'm making it worse. No, Rose said fiercely, kneeling beside her daughter's chair. Don't you let him do that. Don't you let him make you small. But Mama, what if? You've been right about everything, Rose said, her voice breaking. Everything. Every pattern. Every fix. Every problem. You've been right, and they've been wrong, and the only reason they want you to stop is because that scares them more than the hackers do. Terry opened his mouth, but Rose rounded on him. She's 8 years old and she saw what 50 of your experts missed. She's 8 years old and she's fixed systems they broke. She's 8 years old and she found criminals you didn't know existed. Rose's voice rose. So maybe, instead of protecting your ego, you should let her finish protecting people's lives. The live stream chat exploded. 8 million people watching a cleaning woman face down a billionaire. Karen looked up at her mother, then at Terry, then at the screens showing systems still vulnerable, still bleeding data, still at risk. Mr. Huffman, she said softly. What if the systems fail while the investigators are learning? What happens to the people depending on them? Terry's face hardened. That's an appeal to emotion. That's a question about safety, Carl interrupted. And she deserves an answer. Terry looked around the room, at his engineers watching him, at the executives taking notes, at the cameras recording everything, at the child asking questions he didn't want to face. Fine, he said finally, the word harsh. You want to be a hero? You think you can handle adult problems with a child's understanding? He gestured toward a workstation. There's one system you haven't touched. The quantum processing core. The most complex system in this entire facility. It manages real-time predictive modeling for every other system we've discussed. Allen went pale. Terry, that's the backbone of everything, Terry finished. If it's compromised, if it fails, if someone tries to weaponize it, Every system she's fixed becomes a vector for catastrophic failure. He looked at Karen. You want to keep going. Start there. Fix the one system even my senior architects are afraid to touch. 13 hours, 22 minutes, and 11 seconds. Karen looked at the quantum core interface appearing on the main screens. Code so complex it looked like abstract art. Processing pathways that defied normal logic. Architecture that even experienced engineers approached with caution. Rose squeezed her daughter's shoulders. You don't have to. Karen stared at the impossible system. Then her fingers touched the keyboard. Show me, she said. The quantum processing core filled every screen in the demonstration hall. Layers upon layers of nested logic, probability matrices, and predictive algorithms that made the previous systems look like children's toys. I designed this myself, Terry said, unable to keep the pride from his voice despite everything. 3 years of development. Patent pending. It's the reason Huffman Dynamics leads the industry in predictive modeling. Karen scrolled through the architecture slowly, her eyes tracking patterns that seemed to shift and change as the quantum states fluctuated. It's beautiful, she said softly. Terry blinked, surprised. Yes, it is. And confused, Karen added. The softness in Terry's expression vanished. It's quantum processing. It's supposed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. That's not confusion, that's not the quantum part, Karen interrupted, still studying the screens. The part that talks to everything else. The interface. Carl moved closer. The classical quantum bridge. Karen nodded. It's trying to translate between two different kinds of thinking, quantum and regular, but it's using the same rules for both. That's intentional, Terry said defensively. Consistent protocol standards across all interfaces ensures confusion, Karen finished. Because quantum thinking and regular thinking aren't the same. You can't ask them questions the same way. Alan pulled up the interface specifications on another screen. Started reading. His expression changed. Oh no. What? Terry demanded. She's right, Alan said, his voice barely above a whisper. The bridge protocol assumes deterministic states. But quantum operations are probabilistic. So every time the interface requests a definite answer from a quantum process, it forces the system to choose before it's ready, Karen said. Like asking someone to pick their favorite color before they've seen all the colors. Jessie was typing frantically. That would explain the performance inconsistencies. The unpredictable latencies. We kept attributing it to quantum decoherence. But it was the interface all along, Carl finished. Forcing classical logic onto quantum operations. Terry's face had gone rigid. The system works. It's been operational for 2 years. It works slow, Karen said simply. She pointed at performance metrics. See, it's doing everything twice. Once in quantum, then translating to regular, then checking if the translation matches, then doing it again when it doesn't. Show me where, Terry said, his voice tight. Karen navigated to the bridge code. Found the translation protocol. Here. You're telling the quantum side to collapse into a definite state so the regular side can understand it. But you should be asking the quantum side what range of states it's in, then let the regular side work with the range. The room had gone completely silent. Carl stared at the code, then at Karen. That's actually brilliant. It's not my design, Terry said sharply. Yes, it is, Alan said, checking the documentation. You wrote this module personally. There's your signature in the code comments. Terry's jaw worked silently. Can you fix it? Jessie asked Karen. Karen studied the code for another minute, then started typing. The changes were small, subtle, replacing commands with queries. swapping forced resolutions with probability ranges. Letting the quantum side speak its own language instead of being forced into classical binary. Wait, Terry said. You can't just, those changes will cascade through every dependent system. You need to model the impact first, run simulations, verify. Karen pressed enter. 4-3 heartbeats. Nothing happened. Then the performance metrics exploded. Processing speed, plus 127%. Predictive accuracy, plus 94%. System latency, minus 89%. Resource utilization, minus 76%. That's impossible, Terry breathed. Carl was running verification after verification, each one confirming the numbers. It's not impossible. It's just, she eliminated years of accumulated inefficiency in 30 seconds. All the systems, Alan said with dawning realization. Every system in this facility was designed using the same fundamental philosophy, the same training, the same assumptions about how to impose control and certainty. And all of them were limited by it, Jesse finished. Karen turned to look at Terry. You taught everyone to make systems do what you wanted. But sometimes you have to ask systems what they can do, and work with that instead. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Terry stared at the metrics, at his masterwork performing twice as efficiently because a child had questioned his most basic assumptions. His hands were shaking. This doesn't change anything, he said, but his voice was hollow. The breach still exists. The data theft. The liability. Actually, Jessie said, her fingers flying across her keyboard, with the quantum core running this efficiently, I can trace the exfiltration pathways in real time now. The processing power we just freed up is... She stopped. Oh God! What? Carl asked. Jessie's face had gone white. The data isn't going to foreign actors. Then where? The security chief's tablet chimed urgently. He looked at it. Looked at Terry. His expression turned to stone. Sir, he said quietly, we've completed the trace on the destination servers. And Terry demanded. They're registered to a subsidiary company. Holding corporation. Shell ownership structure, but we tracked it through. The security chief's voice was very careful. The ultimate controlling entity is listed as T. Huffman Private Ventures. The room went absolutely silent. That's impossible, Terry said. I've never. The credentials being used, the security chief continued, reading from his tablet, are authenticated against your personal executive access codes. The data transfers initiated 8 months ago, 3 days after you filed patents for next-generation predictive systems. Carl's voice was barely a whisper. You were stealing from your own company. And oh, Terry said, but the word came out too loud, too desperate. This is a frame job. Corporate espionage. Someone using my credentials to... The quantum core, Alan said suddenly. Karen, check the quantum core for the same hidden pathways. Karen navigated through the newly optimized code. Found them almost immediately. Here. And here. Same pattern. Copies going out. She looked up. But these are older. Almost 3 years. The exact timeline of the quantum core's development. Terry Huffman, Billionaire CEO, stood exposed in front of 8 million witnesses. The man who'd mocked a child for lack of credentials. Revealed as the architect of his own company's exploitation. 13 hours, 4 minutes and 27 seconds. The security chief spoke into his radio. Send them in. The doors opened. Federal agents entered, badges already displayed. 13 hours, 4 minutes and 27 seconds. The federal agents moved with practiced efficiency. No drama. No raised voices. Just quiet authority that filled the room more effectively than any alarm. Mr. Huffman, the lead agent said, showing her credentials. I'm Special Agent Morrison, FBI Cyber Division. We need to speak with you about unauthorized data transfers from Huffman Dynamics Systems. Terry's face cycled through emotions too quickly to name: denial, anger, fear, calculation. I want my lawyers. I'm not saying anything without. That's your right, sir. Agent Morrison's voice was professionally neutral. She glanced at the cameras still broadcasting everything. Though I should mention that several million people just watched evidence of corporate fraud being discovered in real time. Terry looked at the cameras like he'd forgotten they existed. The live stream count had hit 9.4 million. The biggest tech story of the decade, unfolding live. I can explain, Terry said, then stopped, realizing how hollow it sounded. Agent Morrison turned to Karen, her expression softening slightly. You're Karen Douglas? Karen nodded, suddenly looking very small in her oversized chair. You did good work today, Morrison said. We're going to need your testimony eventually, but for now, you should probably get some rest. Rose wrapped both arms around Karen's shoulders. We're leaving. Right now. Wait, Carl said. He approached Terry, his voice hard. The 50 million. You made a public commitment. These people, he gestured at the cameras, at the millions watching, they all heard it. Terry laughed, a broken sound. You think I'm going to honor a bet while I'm being investigated for fraud? I think, Carl said quietly, that you're going to honor the one thing you can still control. The one choice that might show you're capable of doing the right thing. The room watched in silence. Terry looked at Karen. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time. Saw a tired child who'd worked for 13 hours straight. Who'd found problems he'd created. Who'd fixed systems he'd broken. Who'd exposed crimes he'd committed. Who'd done everything she'd said she could do. Transfer the funds, he said finally to his assistant. 50 million to a trust in Karen Douglas's name. The assistant hesitated. Sir, given the circumstances, the board might. Do it, Terry said, his voice empty. It's the only honest thing I've done today. 12 hours, 47 minutes, and 15 seconds. While assistants processed the transfer, Linda gathered Karen's classmates. They'd slept through the final confrontation, and now woke to a world that had changed while they dreamed. Is Karen in trouble? Jason asked, still groggy. No, baby, Linda said gently. Karen's a hero. Did she win the money? The red-haired Jesse asked. Linda nodded. $50 million, Alan whispered, trying to comprehend the number. But Karen didn't look like someone who'd won. She looked exhausted, overwhelmed, like she'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. Rose knelt beside her daughter. How do you feel, baby? Tired, Karen said. Then softer. Did I do the right thing? Oh, honey. Rose pulled her close. You did everything right. You helped people. You found truth. You showed everyone that intelligence isn't about where you went to school or who your parents are. But Mr. Huffman made his own choices, Rose said firmly. None of that is your responsibility. 12 hours, 39 minutes, and 8 seconds. The transfer confirmed. $50 million, held in trust for an 8-year-old girl who'd spent the last 13 hours proving that clarity mattered more than credentials. Karen's classmates gathered around her as Linda prepared to finally leave. You're going to be famous, Jason said. You're going to be rich, Jesse added. You're going to be remembered, Alan finished. Karen looked at her friends. Children who'd watched her work, who'd supported her, who'd believed in her when adults had doubted. I just want to go home, she said. And somehow, that was the perfect answer. 12 hours, 33 minutes, and 42 seconds. Rose and Karen walked toward the exit, past engineers who stepped aside respectfully, past executives who wouldn't meet their eyes, past cameras that tracked their every move. At the door, Karen stopped, turned back. Mr. Carl. The senior engineer looked up. Yes. The systems are still vulnerable. The pathways I found. Someone should close them. And the quantum core, the optimization I did, you should check it after I leave. Make sure I didn't miss anything. Carl's eyes glistened. I will. Thank you, Karen. She nodded. Then she and Rose walked through the doors, out of Huffman Dynamics, into the afternoon sunlight. Behind them, agents escorted Terry Huffman toward a very different kind of exit. 12 hours, 28 minutes, and 19 seconds. The live stream ended. The demonstration hall emptied slowly. Engineers remained at their workstations, studying the fixes Karen had implemented, marveling at the simplicity they'd somehow never seen. Jesse, the junior engineer, pulled up Karen's methodology. The grouping system. The pattern recognition. The fundamental question that changed everything. What if we're asking wrong? We should teach this, she said to Alan. This approach. This way of thinking. Who would teach it? Alan asked. She's 8 years old. There's no curriculum. No textbook. No academic framework. Maybe that's the problem, Jesse said quietly. Maybe we keep missing what matters because we only teach what we already know. 12 hours, 15 minutes, and 3 seconds. In the back of her mother's car, Karen fell asleep with her head against the window. She dreamed of systems finding their balance, of questions asked instead of commands given, of computers finally understanding what humans meant to say. Rose drove carefully, watching her daughter in the rearview mirror, thinking about $50 million and what it meant for their future. But more than that, thinking about what Karen had proven. That brilliance doesn't wait for permission. That clarity doesn't require credentials. That sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the only one actually seeing. 12 hours. The countdown clock reached 0. But the real lesson had been learned hours ago. Terry Huffman sat alone in a conference room, waiting for lawyers, facing consequences, remembering the moment he'd pointed at a child and said, "Fix this, kid." He'd meant it as mockery. She'd treated it as invitation. And in doing so, she'd revealed everything he'd built his empire on was fundamentally flawed. Not the systems, but the thinking behind them. The assumption that complexity required credentials. That understanding required pedigree. That intelligence was something you earned through the right schools, the right background, the right breeding. Karen Douglas had proven something far more dangerous to people like Terry Huffman. Intelligence is seeing clearly. Everything else is just noise.